And we're recording. I'm here today with Alan Moore, Johnny Depp. I don't know, who are you?
Rob Zombie this morning, I think, with the
Okay.
hair. So
Jason Momoa in a few years, maybe?
I should be so lucky.
Well, I said maybe if he goes downhill a bit.
True, that could happen. Yeah, and becomes a lot whiter. Then
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the lighting and maybe if he plays a vampire.
yeah, could happen.
Hmm. Okay, so I'm here today with James Desborough with I keep realizing I keep misspelling my guests. My guest name I keep like calling them the wrong thing or not spelling them right. I got a video with James Raji where I had him repeat his name 3 times and I still said Raggy at the end and he just let it go.
I did the same thing with him.
Yeah, and then with you I keep saying this Boro. But if that makes up for it, I often defend you against people try to cancel you. And I'm like, well, if you like Quentin Tarantino movies, he's basically defending stuff that happens in those movies. So
Yeah,
it's yeah, so this Bora, the James is a controversial figure only in the geek world because only geeks get so tied up about stuff that you cannot do or say in stories and fictional stories. Um, Regular people, if they're going to be offended by my guess, I guess they would go with the ex gangster I had on the show already. So you can't cancel me over James. If you want to cancel me, go check out my episode with Derek Galanis. No relation to me, by the way, despite the similar last names. But yeah, I had an ex gangster on the show. So if anyone's going to be offended, go watch that one instead. Give me a view over there. And James. But yeah, I'm making references for those who know him about anti-censorship stances on just being able to write about stuff that happens that can be bad in real life, and people basically saying no, you can't write about that, and which is silly. It's so that is basically the controversy about James, which is ridiculous. Um, but yeah, let's go on positive. Something positive. What are you working on?
that won't end up being that positive. I'm working currently on what I'm calling. It's not an old school revival. I'm calling it a kind of old school mutant.
Oh yeah, sorry. James is a writer, writes for tabletop role playing games and all that. I'm tired. Just go ahead.
and other stuff. So it's a throwback to a very old game called Bushido, but I am not just cloning it, I'm changing a bunch of stuff at the same time. Because I found out after I started writing that they actually still print and put out the books, so I didn't want to take anything from them. So I decided to change things up a bit. So I'm working on that, but it's been a bit of a trial lately. I don't know if you want to get into the tribulations of publishing, but
Please go ahead.
I was trying to hire some artists, and I always used to do open calls online for artists because I always like helping out new people or giving people work who need the work and all of that sort of thing. But I was flooded with bots and scammers. And despite all my vetting processes, some of the people I actually hired were just didn't get the brief at all. I ended up just kind of paying them to go away. Really. So I've wasted a bunch of money and that's kind of taken the wind out of my sails.
No
So
way.
yeah.
Um, as a quick side note, because what James is referring to is that for be it role playing games or other things, legally, you can use any rule set. It's just the wording of it. So anyone like who wants to make a game, if it's based on an older game that's out of print or whatever, you want to bring it back. If you're careful of the wording and you pick up your own words and you write your own text, you're allowed to use rules that cannot be copyrighted. So, and it's all in good faith. And as James mentioned, he realized like it was already in print. So, so there shouldn't be any stigma about people wanting to bring back old games that are not being supported. Or if you have your own spin on it, it's legal. You're allowed to.
Yeah.
The same way that when Superman came out, other superheroes came out, like Captain Marvel, Shazam, like all that stuff. It's as long as you have your own spin. I don't see it. So yeah, you're doing basically kind of like a samurai running kind of setting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna mention any names, but you know that person that I mentioned. because I'm not gonna talk about my stuff, especially because it might come out in years from now because I'm so slow. But there's someone that I actually hired to do some things. Did you have a good experience with that person? I don't. If you don't remember, we'll let it go. But don't mention names.
Uh, is it someone you've had on the show?
No, 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 no. In private
No.
messages, I said, "Oh, that person does a good job. Does a good job."
I can't remember. It's too
It's okay.
early here.
Doesn't matter. I might even edit this out. Actually, it might be awkward. Uh, um, or not. No, I don't think I'll put in the work to find this little segment. So yeah, so you had people just like not. That's depressing. That's depressing.
Yeah, it's. I don't. I think it ties into the whole AI art thing a bit
Yeah.
somehow. Um, I don't know if you want to get into the weeds on this, but
Go ahead. Go ahead. Like I think this is interesting stuff. For anyone wondering, um my only qualms about it are not so much as, oh, the money could have gone to artists or whatever, because normally people who use it, I mean, morally at least, say like you're already tied on money, you're an independent like person, like working on for yourself and such. My only qualm myself, just open book, is that it sometimes actually just goes and rips off like an actual piece of art somewhere else. From what I've seen, I don't know how true that is, how likely, I should say it is true, but I don't know how likely that is to happen. But what I've seen from some people, and maybe maybe they're like exacerbating the probabilities just to push their agenda, but was that you can sometimes like have AI create something for you, and then it turns out to be like super similar to what an artist actually made, or almost
mm.
the same thing. So that's a risk that apparently exists, and that's my own qualms about it. But I'm interested on hearing your side, and I'm not like witch hunting in regards to AI. Um, but
Well,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
on AI art itself, I haven't come down on a position yet. Whenever someone's super pro AI, they tend to push me in the opposite direction, and any time anyone's super anti,
Yeah.
that tends to push me in the other direction. I think some sort of blended hybrid approach will probably be how things shake out. I mean, people used to be against using Photoshop with exactly the same kind of fervor, and look where we are now. So I
I
think
mean,
it's gonna.
for like, I think for YouTube channel stills, and like if someone needs like for that, I think it's perfectly fine, because YouTube stills, you can even grab like people's photos. Like people do it all the time, like they just do whatever. But if we're talking like, I guess I should be specific. If we're talking like, if someone talks about Dune books or whatever, they'll grab fan art from the internet, or you know what I mean? Like it's just like this different sort of context. But if we're talking about books, I guess I should
Yeah.
clarify. Like just, I think people using AI for their YouTube channels, like this is a for the screen, or whatever display image. I was trying to come
Yeah.
up with.
So,
Yeah,
so this was my experience. Yeah, I put out this open call for art, and I get flooded in a way that I never normally do. Quite often when I put out open calls, I don't get any replies. This time, it's got to be over 50 people coming at me, clamoring for them to work for me to do these pieces, and a suspiciously large number of them have pretty girls as their avatars, right? And then so you get into conversation trying to figure out who's actually a real person and who isn't, and you tell them what the brief is. A whole bunch of them linked to galleries, which were all hosted on the same site. I think it's the Adobe one that they will host portfolios for you. And so I followed those links. I went through them, right click, reverse search different art by different people that they've stolen, and put on their profile. So you cut those people out. And others had portfolios that were obviously AI art. And while I don't necessarily have anything against AI art, you shouldn't present it as your own work, as if you're an artist
yeah, that's
when you do that, right? And then a few of them later on, you say, okay, do me some sketches or something, and they come through, and then they want payment up front for part of the fee. And oh no, don't pay me, pay my friend who just happens to live in Pakistan every single time. It's a nightmare, and it's really kind of knocked me back. I've never had this experience before, so it's something new, some new scam or some way to try and misrepresent their work.
Yeah.
It's horrible because I don't want to just go through back channels of other RPG industry publishers
You might have
because
to.
then well, yeah, but then it gets really cliquey. It's always
Or
the same
just
people
look
you go to.
outside. Look outside RPG. Like you can look for artists outside that environment. I think instead of doing like just you can't just post online these days. It's just crazy. I think what you could do is try to think outside the box, your box,
Mm,
and you look for
yeah,
real artists, but outside, and you might even get like some stuff that's I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but tattoo artists or whatever, and then
yeah,
because you know that the collaboration between like role playing gamers and tattoo artists is always very harmonious. Haha,
yeah,
inside joke. But but Google it, people. I don't know, like D and
yeah.
D tattoo artists. Have fun with it. But or go on Grimm's channel. You might find stuff. I think you can just look for artists outside of that
Mm,
box and maybe find something interesting. Um, like comic book people come to mind, but they might have their own stuff going on. Like. But I think yeah, tattoo artists, graffiti artists, stuff like that. You might get some stuff that's different. Also, while I'm normally a bit snobbish about the use of stock art for some books, like where I feel like yeah, it works if you stretch it. You know what I mean? Like sure, it could be for this book if you squint, and stuff like that. I think for like if you're doing like a samurai game, that has to be easy, right? I think the only
yeah,
issue might be like making sure that you don't find a picture where the artist drew a geisha with a Chinese dress or something, because some people just draw whatever. Like I think that would be the only issue. Just if anything, making sure that the stock art is legit, and you can always ask your collaborator, T-shirt historian, who's like a big fan of
yeah,
samurai stuff, to help you there if needed. But um, I think stock art in this case should be fairly easy, where it's not going to be an issue to find something that just fits. Period. Not if you squint, it just that's a freaking
yeah.
ninja. That's a freaking samurai. That's a like I don't know. This
Ninjas aren't real.
say that to the one behind you. Bam, bam, bam. So yeah. So I'm excited to for your next game. Sometimes I wonder if you wouldn't be best served by having your own like system you always go back to, because people like that interconnectedness, and then you can kind of like sort of make it one big setting. It's I'm actually playing with that, and you know how quickly I work on those things, as in I've never put anything out yet, but I'm actually playing with that after my current thing I'm doing. I'm thinking of this setting where I'm just gonna go with my own rule set, and I'm just gonna put everything together. I kind of want to go back to the days of not in every sense of the word, but the old world of darkness, where like people had fun connecting the dots, except maybe make it so the dots actually connect.
Yeah, it's that's actually a bit of a quandary lately because it seems like less and less people are willing to try different systems or learn a new system. I don't know whether that's
But if you have it
like,
initially, but long
yeah,
term, if you because people want to support you, right? There's a lot of people who buy your stuff to support you because they find it unfair how you've been canceled and stuff like that, and I find that I see some of your projects, really cool ideas, but you're kind of like you scatter them, right? You have like
yes,
actual effing monsters, which I don't know if you got inspiration from Savage Worlds, or I don't remember exactly all the rules right now. But and then you have another project and you do it with the D6 open system, which everyone has access to, and you kind of like, and of course, not everything is meant to be clear. Not every game you'll do should connect to another. That goes without
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
But I think that you could certainly find a way, especially if you do historical. Historical can plug and detach from other stuff. and then you can plug it to the modern one, and like, look, if there's a supernatural creature there, you can always use it in modern times because I'm using the same grim gym system, or whatever. I
Well,
think it would give this like interconnectedness where maybe it makes it over time that people give you a shot. Oh, already have the system for this thing, yeah,
yeah. So I have too many ideas, which means that I tend to be quite sort of scattershot. I like to work on whatever it was that's grabbed my attention at the time.
hmm
Um, and I'm someone who thinks that system matters. And I think ideally,
I know that
right?
about you. But if I
Yeah.
can rudely interrupt, my point is for certain, let's say more cinematic stuff, you could have that one system of yours. And then if you do
Yeah.
like a down to earth realistic thing, you do something else. But I'm not saying always do the same thing, but I think you'd be well served to have like your own universe, like
Mm.
your own setting, fictional and rules, which is like the grim world, whatever you want to call it. I mean, don't call it grim world, or do, I don't know. But
Yeah.
no, you can't because I said it, so I'm gonna sue you if you use it. No, I'm kidding. But we'll have to go
But
back to that, the suing and who had the idea. We're gonna talk about something else in a moment. But you
but
know, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I just don't have the staying power on a single idea or a single system because I'm constantly wanting to try new things. That's just who I am. If I had,
But you could try it in like in the games. Again, I'm interrupting. I'm
yeah,
really pushing you here. Like World of Darkness, this is vampires, this is werewolves, this is mages, this is ghosts. Like blah, blah, blah. And you can scatter it more. You can do like this is
Mm,
in yeah. But just have that. I think that one connective tissue,
mm.
which
But
I don't know. Yeah.
so for me, as if you want to call it art, what we do as an artist
It
in games, for
fucking is
me,
art. Listen, look, everyone, look at me. If you say tabletop role playing games are art, if you don't agree, fuck you.
okay, all right. But I think they work best when system and setting are in synergy with one
Yes.
another, where they each reinforce.
hmm
Um, I do use more generic systems where I think it fits. So I've used D6,
Yeah.
which is an open system, like you said. I've
Yeah.
used Fate, which is an open system. I have done old school style
hmm
D&D compatible gaming. I've done stuff for various editions of D&D, because it's appropriate. And then I've also made up my own systems
Yeah.
where it's appropriate, or sometimes just because I'm fascinated with some aspect of a system, and then the game comes after. Sometimes it's the opposite way around.
Yeah.
But we had an interview with Mark Reinhagen on T-Shirted Historians channel. Mark Reinhagen, creator of Vampire,
The Masquerade.
storyteller, all
Yeah.
of that.
In the
Yeah,
90s. Yeah. He
yeah.
he actually was supposed. I'm just gonna. Okay, never mind. Go ahead. Yeah.
So he's an interesting guy who did innovate systems and changed the way people roleplay
hmm
to quite an extent, I think.
Yes.
And his thought, his focus is, you know, maybe I should just make things. He wants to focus on the setting and the ideas. That's where he now wants to put his focus. He doesn't want to focus so much on the system. So he's
I mean, you
become
could
much
argue
more.
that was already what he was doing with the World of
Yeah,
Darkness, Vampire
but
Masquerade. I
but
would argue.
storyteller was a new system, right?
Yeah, I think so. Did I read somewhere? Was he a big fan of D6? Because you can kind of see. What's interesting about role playing game rules, and as I'm working on my own, I find that if you like, for example, the moment I realized that, and I'm gonna bring up two systems, and one of them is gonna be really relevant for where we're gonna head after. Basic role playing from Chaosium, and then GURPS from Steve Jackson Games. And we'll talk about Steve Jackson Games in a second. Um, when you realize they're actually D&D, when you scratch and you go, oh yeah, the ranges of 1 to 18 or 20, this is D&D,
Yeah,
and then just translate it to percentile for basic, or keeping the 3d6 as when you roll the stats in D&D initially for GURPS, and you're like, oh, okay, when you scratch the surface. And I don't know if I read that somewhere or if this is a thought that occurred to me. I don't even know anymore. I feel like maybe the storyteller system from Vampire, like was actually the D6 Western game system slightly modified. So instead of adding up the results on the dice, you add up the successes, and then you switch from D6 to D10s, maybe to fit more the dot idea. Just the shape of it is more like it calls back more to the character sheet. Like maybe you had an idea for a character sheet, and you thought, well, it would look better if the dice are the same sort of shape as the dots in the sheet. I don't
Mm.
know if that was the thought process. And I think it's actually, and you look at the health boxes, and I think actually what it was just like a house ruled D6 system, I think.
Mm. People normally make the comparison to Shadowrun, which was the first game that really popularized dice pools, but that used six-sided dice. So
Oh,
that's what
maybe.
people
Yeah.
normally point to.
Yeah.
But yeah, D&D is the big dog, right? And so many people do D&D compatible stuff because D&D is like our lingua franca of gaming, and it influenced everything. And it's the big thing. Um, Maybe Call of Cthulhu if you're in Asia or whatever. But even basic role playing, the statistics kind of draw back to D&D.
Yeah.
So it's always tempting to go where the main audience is and do something that's familiar to them. But the old school movement is a little bit more flexible than trying to be compatible with fifth edition or whatever. People do a lot more experimental stuff with the old school Renaissance. Like you can mess with the system a lot and still have it
Oh, yeah.
seem familiar to
Yeah.
people. Um, so OSR old school has almost the same level of network externality that actual D&D does, which is why I think we've seen so many like $1 million crowdfunding things for old school type rules. So the temptation is always there to try and cram some game idea into the old school so that you tap into that big audience that's out there, especially as mainstream D&D kind of falters a bit at the end of its product cycle, and with Wizards having pissed everyone in the world off one way or another
Right
now.
before the movie too. That was funny. Uh,
Yeah.
I wonder. Your previous big project, Whitechester. How much do you think it helped it to be fifth edition, if at all? Fifth edition D&D, for those who don't know.
For the amount of work that went into it, it has not paid itself off in any way, shape, or form. Whitechester. Um, but it was very fulfilling creatively, artistically. The critics have been very kind. The reviewers have been very kind. People who have picked it up have been very kind. But I think it was always going to be a hard sell. A 500-page, in-depth city crawl. I think that was always going to be a bit of a hard sell, especially since it's just the book, because I don't have the production capability to
Make it a
do all
box
the
set. Yeah.
your box set, custom dice, all that stuff. Plus, I wouldn't. This might be a uniquely British thing, but I've always been kind of against box sets because you get charged extra VAT tax on
Yeah,
on
that's
box
fair.
games.
But I mean, okay, so I'm sorry to hear that it hasn't been a financial. If it has definitely been a creative success, I
Yeah,
can vouch for that. I'm
and
sorry
of
to hear.
course, I was very ill
Yeah, I know.
during the time that Whitechester was put together,
Yeah,
so it took a lot longer. And it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I had to bring in a lot of other writers to help out, and they were great. But originally it was going to be just me, but circumstances intervened. I still think it's great, and I love it. I wish it was a bit more popular than it is, but eh, in every other way, it's been very fulfilling.
I'm gonna come with some tough love now, or maybe I'm gonna be completely off, and you can correct me and tell me, Bruno, you're wrong. Do you think maybe because the fifth edition crowd tends to be, stereotypically speaking, the type of crowd who in real life will like to make their hair certain colors and have like long sessions of role-playing games in a coffee shop or something instead of killing creatures, and so those stereotypes aside about fifth edition, do you think that maybe your product would have been better served by actually being like old school Renaissance? Do you think that some people, for what it was, and I know that in many ways it was you had a reaction to the current version of Ravenloft, which is supposed to be the horror setting for the Indian, was a joke at that. Do you think maybe you should have been like, this is going to be old school Renaissance, or a system that's going to appeal to the type of crowd that would more appreciate a city crawl full of zombies in a historical setting? Or, instead of, or instead of making it like, here are the rules on the side for Lamentations of Flame Princess, making it a Lamentations of Flame Princess product mainly instead of 5e. Do you think that, and anyone can use it easily from one to the other, but like presentation is everything, right? Do you think that like going 5e is kind of like as if I'm going to shoehorn my hobby of liking mixed martial arts? If I went to a Tai Chi class, which is all about movements in the air, and I went like, so are we going to do some hard sparring? Like, I don't think I'm going to find a lot of people who are going to want to do that. So when you go into the 5e pool and go like, hey everyone, here's my hardcore zombie historical city crawl. And they're like, yeah, well, we're gonna role play being half demons, drinking coffee over here in this tavern for half an hour, so we're good. And then like the people might have been like, fuck yeah, they're not in that room, they're not in the same room. Do you think there might be some of that? Because I was worried about that aspect, and I kept it to myself because I was helping you promote the thing. I wanted it to work, so I kept that negativity to myself. Now that you're telling me this, I'm just putting it out there. What do you
But
think of my thoughts?
I did multi-stat it, so but
Yes.
like you say, I didn't
The
necessarily lead from the
presentation was
front.
5e.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Shadow Dark is basically fifth edition, and
Is it
that's
though?
that was
I
that
find
was massively popular. So
yeah, but it's not that. I think Shadow Dark, what it was like it was kind of like giving permission to the 5e players to try the old school stuff through
mm,
someone that they would approve of, through not having to deal with the scary aspect of different dice and rules for different skills and stuff like that. I think it was just like, and you look at Castles and Crusades, they were doing that for the longest time ever. Like D20
yeah,
going up and the same rule for everything. And Castles and Crusades have been doing that ever since third edition existed almost. So it's not that it was new, but it was this presentation. And also Castles and Crusades has an aesthetic that's very much advanced D&D and all that. So
mhm,
Shadowrunner has I guess an aesthetic that's old school essentials, which I think people don't credit Raji enough for Lamentations of Flame Princess, because when I looked at the book of old school essentials, I think they took a lot of inspiration from Lamentations of a Flame Princess. The format, the colorful page spreads in the middle of the black and white pages, stuff like that. I think that sort of European presentation of the book. I don't know if I should call it European, but maybe I don't know.
mm,
No, wait, is
yeah.
Reggie? No, Reggie's American, right?
Raji's American, living in Finland.
Okay, never mind what I said about European, but you know what I mean.
Well,
Yeah,
no, I think it is, and I think he draws a lot from like extreme metal fanzines and album covers, and
yeah.
you know
That
that
didn't
that
carry
sort of
into
thing.
also essentials. To be clear, I don't mean the thematic
Mm,
presentation, but I mean the matter of fact, like making stuff easy to find a certain way, putting like old school black and white and old school pictures, but then you have like beautiful colored art in the middle, like in a certain
yeah.
format that's a nice book, like a nice book. Just a sec, I gotta just give me one moment. I gotta just dude, I almost tripped on my kettlebell.
Oops.
Yeah, that would have been you would have heard like bang. Bruno, you okay, Bruno? Come back like with blood, like, "Ugh." And then like, it's like, well, we're talking about lamentations, so there's the blood. Um, okay, perfect. So, what was I gonna say? Yeah. Anyway, but let's. I think Shadow Dark was giving permission for a certain crowd to explore that, and you know, without all the old white men polluting the And by the way, me and Jim are either Jim is very very left, and I'm certainly left leaning. So just to be clear, I'm kind of like making a joke about the perception of the old school Renaissance for some people. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I wonder if Whitechester might have been better served to just be presented as an old school product first and foremost, instead of 5e with on the side. Like, because yeah, some people are just like, like they just avoid 5e at this point. They see it as the vanilla thing, like
yeah, yeah.
uh,
I mean, part of the idea was to try and show some of the appeal of this style of gaming to people. So I guess I failed on that score, but everything else, I'm happy with it. It's just wish it would make more money.
it's an amazing product. Like it's an amazing, and it's so like it's thick with two C's. Like, give me a moment. I'm gonna go grab it. This is like the amount of content you get for like for books of the price that this is normally. This is a lot of content. This is like, I don't know how many sessions of play this is gonna be, but like I have like I don't I don't play lately, but no time for that, fortunately. But it's just like, if anyone can see like how like massive this thing
Yeah,
is, very fairly priced, and
I,
this is like hours and hours and hours of play.
I
Uh,
think the size of it is also a bit intimidating to people, but a big part of the reason why it's such a huge book is because everything is there that you need, so you can literally just pick it up
yeah, you
and
don't
start
have to read
playing.
ahead. Exactly.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
it does require the kind of old school player who can sit patiently while the DM reads the section to himself or herself or themselves
yeah,
or ex self, and like, it just go, okay, building 8. Okay, guys, just a moment. Okay. Okay, very well. And I'm gonna read this section now. Like, and just like, maybe players have to wait a minute. You know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
again, these days, any moment of silence or reflection or pause can be very stressful for people who, and they might go on their cell phones right away and something. Like, so yeah, it's one of those things. Anyway, but it's an amazing product. Maybe over time, it's gonna be one of those things, with that over time it'll recoup if you give it enough time. Like those movies that get
Yeah,
rediscovered, or like, the thing about you is that you have your store and your website and on other places and other platforms, and whatever you created years and years ago can still bring you money over time. So
yeah, yeah,
that's part of your business, is the fact that there's a lot of stuff available that people can cherry pick. She ended up coughing before you, even though you're the one with a reason to cough. But um, yeah, I think over time like it has to like stand out at some point. I
Mm.
have to believe it. It's gonna. I think what you set out as an artist, what you set out to do when you grab Ravenloft 5e and ask, "What the fuck is this shit?" I think you answered. Yeah, as an artist, you succeeded. So, um,
Yeah, it's a bit makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, but I often do my best work as a reaction to something that's pissed me off.
like actual fucking monsters with vampires
Like actual fucking
position being,
monsters. Yeah.
we're to the point of people being so immature that I don't even want to get into the more ugly stuff,
Mm.
because also it that would require for us to talk about it for a long time, which I don't want to do, because I want to go back to some stuff about yourself that's happening lately. But and some of the stuff is ridiculous only when you can give it a full explanation, because at the face value someone might go, Oh, but I can also see the other point of view. And no, but look, you have to understand, like, this is ridiculous because this person being accused of being a bigot was Jewish, and like you get lost into all the
Yeah,
interconnected web
yeah.
of fallacies and like how ridiculous this is and all that. But if I can give one example, so people can comprehend how stupid this shit was with Vampire 5e. You know how in video games and games and everything, like, this triggers this effect, like this power will be triggered by doing this or that. People got triggered by the use of the word trigger for rules, for game rules. Now, if you don't think this is ridiculous, please stop watching my channel. For everyone else who has a brain and common sense, now you understand the level of immaturity, of lack of self-awareness that some people in the tabletop RPG industry have, the lack of coping mechanisms for the real world. So James made a game. Well, you know what? I'm gonna make a game about playing monsters, and you do awful stuff, and that's what it is. And I applaud you for that. I applaud you for that. And the cover, I'm gonna go get it. It's really funny because the cover has scared off some people, but it's actually a genius when you know what it is. Give me just one. Again, I'm gonna
Okay.
get up to get one of your books, Tim. So if anyone flags the imagery, I'm just fucking off to Rumble. Okay, like someone else did, which we'll also mention. So this is like a Twilight book, right? It's like, oh my god, this is Twilight. You have the heavy metal letters giving you a hint, but this is like a goth girl with a shirtless dude and another dude with an emo haircut, and then you look at the back of the book, and they actually turn into like a vampire in shape of a bat in a werewolf, and they're ripping her apart. So it's kind of like, enough of this Twilight shit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of I kind of sabotaged myself with that cover,
But you
unfortunately,
should have
for the
done
sake
the
of a
preview
joke.
image. You should have done this.
Yeah,
Then people see it right away. They get the joke.
yeah, yeah. But sabotaging myself for the sake of a joke, that's my life story, I think.
Yes. I mean, as long as you don't make me say it. Okay, listen. There's stuff I want to touch base on with you. Um, Man, we already talked about. I have a list here because I didn't trust
Okay.
myself. I'm so tired. And we,
Right, come on. Move on. Let's
yeah,
hit
yeah,
these
yeah.
points.
Let's okay. Coming project is done. AI art is done. Um, okay. Let's go with We mentioned Steve Jackson Games, right? And they're celebrating their Munchkin game. Um, which has been popular, has sold. Like every time I've gone to a hobby store anywhere in Canada, I've always seen something Munchkin. I myself have bought so many GURPS books back in the day. Third edition stuff, and not the new one since then. But I bought Munchkin this, Munchkin that before meeting you and all that. For you, the celebration is not as happy, I believe.
It's yeah, it's a bit bittersweet. So my first proper gig in the proper industry was co-writing the Munchkin's Guide to Power Gaming, which was a very successful book at the time. I guess it's kind of at the beginning of gaming as a lifestyle brand, I guess at the turn of the millennium.
D20
Um,
was getting us there, yeah.
yeah,
Back then,
yeah,
yeah, it was becoming.
yeah. So this was a game book that wasn't actually a game book. It was a comedy book about the culture of gaming.
Mhm.
Um, and for the time, hugely successful, but it was it was a comedy book that we put out about gaming culture right at the very end of second edition, just as third edition was coming up.
Of D&D.
Very success, yeah, of D&D. very, very successful, and kind of launched my career, which is something to be grateful for. Um, but the contract was not particularly great. But then you figure, oh, it's my first job. What choice do I have if I want to make a go of this? And so there's been a whole bunch of derivative work from that comedy book. They're counting the anniversary from the publication of the book, but
That you wrote
despite
with someone else.
the me
And
and
I want to add,
Steve
and I
Wilson
just want
wrote.
to add real quick, the artist that's more commonly attached to the Munchkin brand didn't participate. John Kovalik didn't participate
Kovalik,
in the book you wrote, but you and the other writer wanted him for that book initially. So him
yeah,
jumping on the brand afterwards was from the idea of you and your co-writer.
yeah.
Which,
That was
oh,
from
that
us.
style, like that book, the popularity owes a lot to that comedic art that it was you guys' idea, not Steve Jackson's.
Yeah. He did a couple of pieces for the book, but
Oh, he did. Okay. Yeah.
we initially wanted him to do the whole
Everything.
thing if
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah. But Steve Jackson
but he
likes
did.
to have lots of artists for one book, and they do that often.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he came in later for the Munchkin D20 and the card game.
Yeah.
Um, so for the celebration this year of the 25th anniversary, God, that makes me feel old. They're doing this
Yeah.
crowdfunder for a
Not
big
your beard. The
box.
beard doesn't make you feel
The
old.
beard doesn't. No, that
Oh,
just looks cool. I like
Munchkin
that.
makes you feel old.
Munchkin makes me feel old. So they've done this crowdfunder for this big box, which is like 600 cards, selected from a whole bunch of supplements and stuff they've done for it. Last I looked, they'd raised $850,000. There's like 10 days left on the Kickstarter. I'd be very surprised if they don't break $1 million, but we don't see a penny, and we haven't seen a penny of anything other than the initial book, and they don't mention the book on the crowdfunder. I barely mention it on the site. Yeah, some of it's sour grapes and wishing, the contract had been a bit better. I mean, to have kicked off something that is so massively popular, that's a nice feeling. I like that, but I'm a disabled creator with not that much money, really. All
Yeah.
things considered, it would be nice to be remembered as having kicked all this off. It would be nice if the Munchkin millions that have been made over the years, some of that trickled down to me and my co-writer. you know,
The whole story makes me. I don't think I can even. And look, I know you're not the kind of guy who asks that of us. Okay, I'm not. I don't want to imply that you do. You tell people play what you like, even from your enemies. If you enjoy a product from someone who's been helpful to you, you don't hold it against people. I myself used to have a deep appreciation for GURPS. I can't go back to it now because of this shit.
I
And
I don't
look,
have a
it's just that's me.
yeah.
That's my take on it. I know you don't ask me to do that. If anything, at some point I did mention GURPS on Twitter a while back, and you were the first to jump in and be like, "Oh yeah, you can also do that with a character and all that." And it was kind of like it was kind of funny how just like you just didn't hold a grudge. Like, yes.
No, I just kind of jokingly grumble whenever Munchkin is brought up because
But
it's such a
let me
such
ask
a
you a question.
phenomenon.
Let me ask you a
Yeah.
question that I don't know the answer to. So maybe I'm gonna put you in some hot water, or I'm gonna actually give you even more power. I have no idea. I'm just gonna ask it because that's how I roll. The card game, which is arguably what saved the company, what like the card game is what made Steve Jackson games and the most popular product of the Munchkin brand, if you will. Um, are there aspects of the card game that came from your original book?
Yes, certainly for the initial couple of sets. So Munchkin, the main box, and Unnatural Acts, I think. Um,
Yeah, obviously, when you
it,
get down to the ones that are licensed from products, that's a different story. But
yeah,
well, let's put the
that's
original
less
game
so.
that saved Steve Jackson games, that made it what it is now, and all that.
Yeah, but they changed a couple of things, but you could still see the roots in the book. Like there's the card, the Duck of Doom in the card game. it's Fish of Doom in the book.
And there's a reason
Um,
for that, right? Why they changed slightly.
so the wording in the original contract is if they reused a certain percentage of stuff from the book, and it wasn't that high a percentage. I can't remember exactly what it
Yeah.
was. I've got the contract somewhere squirreled away.
Yeah.
Then they would owe us royalties. I think it was about 2.5% on derivative works. But
So they grab your idea, Duck of Doom, change it to Fish of Doom just to not pay you.
other way around. But
Oh, okay.
possibly just to avoid. It's business. I
It is clearly,
understand.
yeah, but
But it's not the way I do business.
no, I understand.
This is a hobby industry, and if I have something that's a huge success, I pay the other people who've contributed to it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I often pay artists above the rate, or I pay people in advance.
Hmm.
Or if someone who's worked on one of my products and is due a cut and they're having a rough time, I'll up the amount I pay them. So yeah, it's a hobby industry. It's a craft industry. It's barely an industry at all. And you expect a certain amount of, reciprocity and community and that going on. Steve Jackson Games is a very different animal, though.
Yeah,
They've
pisses
always
me
been a
off.
bit more.
Pisses
They've
me
always
off.
been a bit more corporate, a bit more Games Workshop, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But if the situation was reversed, and I had a wildly successful product that was derived from someone else's work, even slightly, I would feel grateful and I would pay him a bonus or something. Yeah, if I suddenly came into $1 million plus, I would feel that I wanted to reward everyone who was involved. But I'm a bad businessman, so don't take my advice on that.
Well, it's a shame, and I wanted to bring it up because it boils my blood. I haven't I haven't gotten rid of my old GURPS books or anything like that because me having them doesn't give them extra money. But I'm certainly never gonna buy anything from them ever again, and I
Mm,
certainly wouldn't. I'll keep them all nostalgia. I like reading the old books, but I wouldn't run a game of that anymore because I don't want anyone to be like, "Oh, this is neat," and then buy the new ones.
yeah.
It's just kind of
Well,
what I'm doing. Again,
what
I've got
I've
no wishes, but
well, what I've done is I've created a pay what you want product on drive-through, so that if anyone has a pricked conscience about Munchkin, they can sling a few bucks my way just by entering in whatever amount. And I've got a document attached to that, which I'm gradually building up with, like, the story of how I got into the industry, how Munchkin got written, what we drew on to create the book, things like that. So that's the document is gradually going to change and build up with, like, the story of Munchkin, I guess.
um, so you mentioned being a yeah, I'm looking at my list. You mentioned being a disabled creator. So this is a good segue into something I wanted to touch upon with you because I saw recently on X, Twitter X, Musk Vision, um, Muskter. So jeez, I am sleep deprived and out of coffee. So I saw you mentioned in the UK, what do you call it, like disability benefits. There you go. I had to look at my paper even for those words. That's how tired I am. Are once again under fire.
Yeah. So I don't like describing myself as a disabled creator, but it's just, like, factually true. But I don't think anyone should buy my shit just because I'm a crip. It's not a good reason.
George Carlin, man. Every time people discuss some stuff online, I'm like, I want to send a George Carlin clip. You're like, cripples. Nothing wrong about the word.
But, yeah, it's just a fact of the world now that you have to identify however it is that you intersect with whatever's going on, so you have license to talk about it. So yeah, I'm partially disabled, but yeah, it doesn't really mean that much. However, yeah, there's problems over here in the UK. This current Tory government just took an absolute shoeing in the local elections, and we're having a general election at some point between now and January of next year. They're like clinging on by their fingernails. Um, but there's a lot of pressure on them from the right wing of their own party and the right, the more far right parties that do exist are sort of
Oh, wait,
squeezing their
let me
vote.
interrupt just a moment. Do you have a party in the UK that has a left and right within the same party? Or
Uh,
you just meant the more right wing? Because I know not every
I
country is the US. I get that. So, and
yeah.
I'm Canadian. So, but we're
Okay.
similar enough.
Well,
But I find it interesting because sometimes in other countries you realize that there's like stuff that intersects in ways, and I'm ripping off the word intersection you from a moment ago. Um, that politically that doesn't in the US, because in the US it's this or that, right? But so sometimes you
okay.
see examples of things that intersect more. So I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
do you mean the more right wing, or is there a party that has both in it? Because that would be interesting.
So the Democrats in
Sorry for my
America
question.
are a see. I studied politics and history, and so I tend to just kind of assume for other people. All right, the Democrats in the US are primarily a centrist party,
Yes.
with many of their members are what I would consider to be right wing. Then the Republican
Oh,
Party is
internationally, I consider myself a centrist. I
yeah,
only mention myself as a leftist in the context of North America, which is my
yeah,
overall context, which is why I often say but leftist. But when I think about it, I'm actually a centrist. I think
yeah,
I'm a
and the
leftist
US
by North American standards. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And the US Republican Party is further to the right than our right wing party, the
Oh,
Conservative
interesting. I
Party.
didn't expect that. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the history with World War II. Oh, U.S. also has that. So.
Yeah, but not quite so close. And they weren't ever bombed by the Nazis. So I
That
think
would
that,
do it. That would do it. Yeah.
yeah, which is why Europeans tend to be like nervous of flag waving and things like that, whereas America isn't. I think it's a
Yeah.
big cultural difference. Um, the current Labour Party has moved much more to the centre, and I
Okay.
would say that some of their members are centre right, but you also have quite a large left wing contingent. So I would say the Labour Party contains both
And fascinating to
at
me.
this
That's
point, but
fascinating to me.
barely. But anyway,
Because it
yeah,
does break my own way of looking at politics,
yeah,
which and it sounds so much healthier too. I know it's not. I know you're telling me about the problems in the UK, but just that aspect that a party can have like that sort of like diversity within
yes,
ideological
yeah,
diversity. It's refreshing to me. Again, I know it's not
yeah,
going well, so please go ahead. Tell me
yeah.
how badly it's not going as I praise an aspect of it. But
Well, the Conservative Party purged its more left wing
but
elements.
what would left wing elements be in the Conservative Party to begin with?
So, in the Conservative Party, there was a wing of it called One Nation Tories, and their view was a lot more traditionally conservative. They had a touch of the aristocrat to them, sort of noblesse oblige, like you've got to look after your people, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And they've largely been got rid of within the Conservative Party.
So the noblesse oblige part wanted them to adopt more socialist ideas. Is that it?
Kind of a similar result, different ideological underpinning.
Okay.
Um, but they would do things like that,
Fascinating
at
to me.
least maintain the National Health Service at the same level it's at, and they would grudgingly accept that you have to have a welfare system, all of these sorts of things. But they would just quibble about how much should go into it.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, the Conservative Party has
Oh,
moved quite
just a
far to the
second.
right.
Sorry. Just a
Yep,
moment. Sorry.
no problem.
Okay. Yeah. So we had to cut from you.
Um,
Just yes. Go ahead.
yeah, Conservative Party, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, the Conservative
Okay.
Party has had.
So the thing is they're messing with your um because I realize I kind of trapped you into a rabbit hole of explaining to me like the basics of UK politics. So if I might bring back what is my own fault.
Okay, all right.
What's
So
so
here,
what's going on with
here
disability? Benefits.
So here's the problem: because they're facing electoral annihilation, and because they're being kind of attacked from the even further right, they keep pushing these really hard right policies. Like they've gone after immigration again with a stupidly wasteful policy, and now they've come out against disabled people because more and more people are registering as disabled, particularly people with mental health issues. And
Okay.
so they see it, especially mental health issues, as being somehow skiving, or it's not really a disability, or you
Hmm.
don't really have problems. We need to get you back into work.
Yeah.
But this is the same party that has gutted medical provision, particularly for psychological services and so on. And we've all been through COVID not that long ago, really. So there's all the knock-on effects from that on people's health, long COVID, and mental health from the isolation of lockdown. That's turning out to
Yeah.
have a long tail, better than being dead. But yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And now they're acting all surprised that more and more people need help and assistance, but they're not investing in the services and support that would actually help people. No, instead, they're looking to punish people and make the process of getting disability benefit even harder. And it's not easy right now. It took a year from starting the application process to getting any assistance when I finally caved and decided that I needed some assistance. And the culture is hugely against anybody who needs help over here as well. Even if it's not the government calling you a skiver and a sponger and all these other things, then it'll be people, ordinary
Yeah.
people thinking the same thing. It's rough, and
Even
they're
though
promising.
you do keep yourself, you actually work as an
Yeah,
business owner, and
yeah,
it's not even like you're just like not doing anything. It's not even the case.
no, and
And
I'm still paying in to the taxes that go to people like me. It's a bit pointless, but it
S-
goes to
s-
show.
yeah, so and I think other countries have like better artist support, right? Like if you're an artist or something, there's like what do you call them? I'm blanking on words. I'm so tired. Not a patronage, but if you're an artist, you may have an annual. You have to apply
Stipend,
for it. Yeah, something like maybe stipend. It's not
grant.
grant. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. You know when you can't find a word, but you know it's not this one you were looking for. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Like why would it be no, not this one if I can't even remember what it is? But grant was the word I was looking for. That's brains are weird, man. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think some other. I don't know which ones, but I feel like there's other European countries that have those things.
Yeah, and you
Uh,
can get assistance for ongoing education in other countries and so on as well. And in the past,
I
we
mean,
have
Raji famously went to Sweden. Is that where
Finland.
he is? Finland. It's all the
Yeah.
same. Kidding. Uh, I get to say it. They're countries of white people. I can say that. Yeah, he went to Finland and he had a grant, right? That was like one of
Yeah.
the and for
Yeah.
like he would be supported for a whole year while he got his company started, which
Yeah.
is really cool. And he
Finland's
has
great.
since
I
then.
wish I lived in Finland.
Wait, but can't you as a European dude, as a European bloke, can't you just go there? Aren't they part of
No,
the European Union? They're
Brexit.
not.
Brexit. I can't.
Oh, bro.
I know.
Okay. Where's
That's
the
a
wound?
whole
I have
other
some more.
show.
I have some more salt. Where's your wound?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Everything hurts. I hurt myself today. Ouch.
Yeah. That's a whole other show.
Isn't middle class disappearing just all over the world?
Seems like it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
Um,
like I think you have this thing where you go like class warfare. You know, you're, like if people are gonna argue, like make it. I think that if people were smarter, you'd have like this MAGA hat Trump supporter next to like a trans person who's like very visibly trans, and they'd be both looking at rich people, going like, "Hey, okay, this person and I, we don't see eye to eye on anything except how come we're struggling so much right now."
Well,
And instead, what they do is they project it on the other side, and they elevate a politician as if like Biden and Trump, neither has a solution. They're not,
no.
yeah, and it's kind of like it's crazy. And I don't know, like I feel like there's a time and place in the world where people could kind of like stand next to someone they didn't agree with and point at the real culprit. And now like the people in power have gotten really good at dividing others, and
Yeah.
they'll do it on
Well,
purpose. They'll spend money on something they know is gonna have people argue, or they have this way of manipulating the crowds that's really working. Not to sound conspirational, I'm talking about very basic stuff. I'm not going like deep into weird stuff. I just mean they do it on purpose. They have people argue. That's just matter of factly. Like,
yeah. Well, that's back in 2008 with the Occupy movement. That's how it started. I mean, you had trans people with stupid names alongside libertarians, and they all agreed that money in politics was a huge problem, and that these banks and things shouldn't be getting bailouts that ordinary people should.
and it
And
never
then
happened again.
yeah, and then gradually it just kind of went. But you know,
Because yeah, because
the
they
division's
realized how
always
to
been
do
there.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's an old classic tactic, turning people against each other.
yeah,
You know
and
that
it's working. People are not very smart.
I don't think there's that much difference between partially disabled liberal arts major forced to do OnlyFans to make ends meet, and some blue collar worker pulling down 50 hours a week just to
In a
get by. You
mine,
know,
coughing
yeah.
their way to death in their 50s. Yeah. Um. No, I fully agree. Like it's just, for example, I think the trans movement and their allies are very similar to conservative religious people. Hear me out.
This should be good.
You have to believe. There's no tangible
Mm.
proof. We're just asking you to believe. If you don't believe, you're not part of our group. You're a blasphemer, or you're not an ally, or so. This is the book, the scripture. If you disagree with it,
Mm.
you're out. So I think there's a lot of commonalities here. I'm actually surprised that two groups of people who ask everyone in between to believe without proof don't agree more on things. Can't see eye to eye. And in fact, if I was religious, I would like to think, if I'm not purely scientific, this is what's interesting to me. I think if I was a religious people, I'd be even more on board with the whole trans thing, because I would be like, look, the soul is a thing. It's not scientific. So why can't a soul be in a different? If like, you can't be like, oh, God wouldn't allow for mistakes. Well, people have physical issues all the time when they're born. So why wouldn't God put, like they like to say, oh, God put this struggle in front of you for a reason? Okay, well, there you go. You're in the wrong body. You were in
Yeah.
a wheelchair. Like whatever. So I find it surprising that they can't get along in that context. But I guess there's other things dividing them. Like um, but and again, I'm not bashing either side here. Just to be clear, I'm just saying, as someone who's not like a trans person, as someone who doesn't believe in God, I'm looking at both sides and I actually see a lot of commonalities there. Food for
Yeah.
thought. And maybe if you do believe in God, maybe there's a soul that should have been in another, or that God chose. I'm gonna put you in this other body for whatever reason is good for the universe, because He always has a plan, right? Or she or they. I don't know what God's identity is, but but yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I think people just they find the divisions. They don't find the commonalities. That's what it is.
Yeah. So it has always been.
Yeah, but like you like to say, class warfare. Like, I don't mean warfare in the actual, not warfare for God's sake, but God's sake, but
The
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 people should
struggle. The
unite more.
struggle.
Yeah, the struggle. They
Yeah.
should unite more, because the middle class is going away. So people are arguing about semantics of what is, if a traditional family is better than the modern family, blah blah blah. Like, how about you look at the fact that you are paying taxes? If paying taxes for safety is good, for health, safety, and things like that is good. Paying taxes that goes to rich people and doesn't go back to the people. Is so I don't agree that taxation
Yeah.
is theft, but I would agree that the taxes are being stolen. Does that make sense? Is that a
Yeah, yeah. I think not to get too sidetracked onto this, but I think a big part of
That's all we're
why
doing is getting sidetracked.
I think a big part of why Americans distrust government so much isn't government, it's corruption, and the fact that their government is crap at doing things, partly because so many people in their government don't believe in government. Right,
Yeah,
as a solution for anything.
yeah,
Whereas if you look at places like the Nordic countries, all the same, all white people, as you were saying earlier, right?
it's
But
if yeah,
they mostly have a similar sort of communalistic approach. We're in this together. If we invest money in our society, it's going to be better for everybody if we put money into education and health and making sure there's no homeless people in the very harsh winters that we have.
yeah,
That's better for everyone, and that's true. But it's partly true because they believe in government and the government believes in government, which is all very weird stuff for me as an anarchist to say. But I'm all about what creates the greatest amount of freedom for the greatest number of people. And in the world in which we live in, a lot of that comes down to what you'd call socialism. That because it provides for people, it gives you the freedom of an education, it gives you the freedom of, not going bankrupt when you get sick.
hmm
It gives you the freedom of knowing that even if things are at their worst, you're going to have a roof over your head.
yeah,
Those are forms of freedom that I think are also important.
yeah. The reason which I concern myself with interest is that I do believe in capitalism, not unhinged capitalism. Like I think there should be rules. It's like again, I like MMA. I wouldn't agree to a rule where you get to bite someone's nose off. So like yeah, so I think like it's a bit the same. Like I like capitalism, but like I'm not saying it shouldn't have any rules. And for example, one of the rules I think is that if you are gonna deal with another country, you should be following the same rules you would follow within your own country. It would be very unpopular with people in power, but that means no, you can't have kids build your shit. You
Yeah,
have to, and you end up hiring at home because why not at this point?
yeah,
So there's things like that that I believe were. It's not that it can't be international, but like, look, if this is the rules we believe in, these are rules that don't go. You can't like if you go elsewhere to do it, then you're like So
yeah,
anyway, but that's complex, and I realize it's easier said than done. But I do. I'm basically a capitalism with socialism sprinkled in it. You know,
yeah.
like like if you break your arm, you don't have to go bankrupt. Stuff like that. If you catch
Yeah,
cancer,
that sounds like a good thing.
you
Yeah.
don't have to become a drug lord like in Breaking Bad. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. And also I find it kind of funny how these days people who are the most vocally anti-capitalist are the first ones to weaponize it, which I think you know a lot about. Um, people who are like, "Oh, capitalism is so bad, so bad, so bad," and then they weaponize it when they don't like someone. You know?
yeah.
Yeah. It's like, "Oh, boycott this person, support this person." Like they're super good at capitalism. Actually, they're
Well,
incredibly savvy at it.
capitalist fundamentalists would say they're distorting the market by creating these boycotts and things. So I
Oh,
don't know.
interesting.
Yeah,
See, this is why it's good to talk politics with you. Um, uh, uh, I want to ask you about one of your friends, Nerd Cognito.
yeah.
Um, so what happened there?
Well, I don't want to speak for Ryan and Kyle and Bert, because they can explain it better. Um, so Ryan, he's in particular, he's a bit of a controversial figure, very outspoken. There's a whole shitload of stuff that I don't agree with him on, but we still manage to remain cordial and friendly.
I know I had him
But
blocked on Twitter, and then I unblocked him when this whole thing happened just to follow with it. So I don't even know why I blocked him, but I did block him at some point.
yeah,
So this
yeah,
is an example.
he will sail close to and over the edge
Yeah,
quite often. And like I
yeah,
say, he says and does things that I don't necessarily agree with. But
yeah. His username
you
is,
know,
I think, is I hate Ryan or something like that.
yeah, I hate Ryan David. Yeah,
That's funny. Like,
uh,
as
which
a guy
seems
who
to be
blocked him, that's
true.
still funny.
Yeah, it seems to be true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know what set anyone off, but his so he runs Nerdcognito, which is primarily a podcast, so it's on podcast providers and things. But they had recently sort of done a foray into YouTube. They were uploading their shows there, and they were doing a thing on Saturdays called the Speakeasy, where they just sort of hang out and talk with their fans and so on.
Mm,
But someone seems to have got it into their head that they need to be stopped
yeah.
somehow. So they went around and reported all of their podcasts for God knows what reason, holding beliefs they didn't like. They were briefly kind of taken down from one of the podcast pushers, um, but then had it restored. But whoever this is, it seems finally got around to YouTube and reported them. And because of some activity on a related but different YouTube channel, like 5, 8, 10 years in the past. They accused Ryan of ban evasion, but then withdrew that, and it's the usual YouTube
Oh,
stuff. You never really,
yeah, it's making me really consider. I created accounts on Odyssey and on Rubble and Rumble, and I haven't started uploading yet. At some point, I activated the Rumble sync thing, and it wasn't working for me. I guess I'm not big enough. And
yeah, it doesn't,
Odyssey, I'm not big enough to even do it at all. So I would have to re-upload everything, which I was really lazy about because I'm doing this for fun. I'm not making any money out of it, so that's kind of like a lot of work already. Just uploading videos from my normal
yeah,
computer. It's not like I have like this like upload speed and all that. But yeah, it's making one like really consider like, wow, YouTube really sucks because you're gonna put all the effort, you're gonna put all your links, and it might just ban you like any conversation for whatever
yeah,
reason. I know that I do think my personal opinion as someone who doesn't think they should be censored or anything like that. I think Nerdcognito was guilty of sometimes, like the look. I don't want to get into the whole woke anti-woke debate here, because woke and anti-woke means different things to different people. For some people, woke just means progressive, and anti-woke just means like bigoted. Other people, it's kind of like woke could be, um, they're all for progressive messages, but it has to be well done. It doesn't have to be. It can't be preachy, or it can't be things that are actually insulting if you think about it. For example, I don't like revisionist history where suddenly countries that were traditionally white European and racist suddenly are not in history, because to me that's actually offensive,
mm,
because I think that people were not that open-minded to rewrite history like that just to cast an actor that you like for that specific context. To me is ignoring evil that happened, and so, but that's a whole conversation. So, but I don't use the words woke, anti-woke, whatever, because they don't mean the same to different people, so I find it kind of like useless. But I know that in their case, they would. I do seem to remember that they saw woke where I don't think there was, and even I'm
mm,
someone who's open to understanding what's the context of the word. Like if someone uses it, and I know them, and I know in which context they're using it, I can understand, like not jump to conclusions. But in their case, I felt like they were often attacking people very quickly, or with having a fraction of a. Oh yeah, I think that's actually why. I don't remember what it was, but they would see like a snippet of something and react to it very negatively, and then it wasn't even that. So they were kind of reacting quickly. And again, it's their right to say it.
yeah,
I'm not calling for their censorship, but I do see why they would rub people the wrong way. Is my point.
yeah, yeah,
And then these days it's extremely easy to say, look, this person, I don't know, this person said something bad about this product, and fans of the or ex fans of Star Wars know the drill, right? Like,
yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're hyperbolic quite often.
I'm not gonna, I'm not saying the censorship is okay. Just I want to.
No, no, no. I can see why people would go after them, but the problem with YouTube,
I can
as
see how they
ever,
could find things. Is my point as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
But the problem with YouTube, as ever, is that it's so opaque. You never know why they're making the decisions they're making.
yeah,
You never find out what it is you did wrong, if anything, or whether it's just an automated process and no human being has been involved at any stage. You never know what's
yeah.
going on.
What I'm
But
thinking of doing because of them though is going on like uploading everything on Rubble, and I'll continue uploading on YouTube. But when I'm promoting and putting links to somewhere else, because especially if I have a talk show and we're talking for over an hour, we're making jokes or like whatever, it could be taking out of context, or even maybe a context that someone didn't like.
Yeah,
Example earlier I compared like, oh, trans people and conservative religious people, it's an ideology, blah blah blah. I'm sure that these days even that someone could grab it and be like, oh, that's bad, like
yeah.
um so it's just,
I
and
mean,
again, I
they
wasn't
just
even insulting either side. I was just observing from a center point of
yeah.
view. But
I mean, they still basically have no competitors, right? Twitch is
yeah,
primarily a live stream platform. If you want to store videos up there, you have to pay more. Odyssey, unless you're a center right to right wing commentator,
yeah,
you're,
that's
you're you're not going to get any traction there. It's kind of similar on Rumble. Rumble's got a slightly bigger
you know
um, Overton window of content.
that's also the thing. I'd be afraid of scaring off certain guests if,
Yeah,
yeah, is that, and that's a reality. That's a
yeah,
reality that there's upcoming guests I have who are coming to the show. Well, at least plan to, because in the past I've shot myself in the foot by announcing things that we had to reschedule, it didn't work out or whatever, and then it's like, oh, that looks silly going back, and I haven't deleted them or anything, but there's old posts on my Instagram where I'm like, oh, this person coming this, and then it didn't work out for whatever reason, so I
yeah,
stopped doing that. But there's certainly people who, um, I don't know if I was like, yeah, it's gonna be on Odyssey on Rumble. The reality, that's the reality, and I want to have like lots of different people from points of view and all that, and like I don't know if that wouldn't scare them off.
yeah. It might see that is the other side of this. The flip side of the
Conundrum, yeah,
problem
yeah,
is that if if a competitor emerges, right, like Rumble, who are the people who've been censored first off YouTube that are going to migrate to that platform? Mostly, quite objectionable people.
yeah.
If you're a normie, a lot of far right commentators and so on who've been yeeted off YouTube end up there. And so, when a competitor emerges, the first rush of content that they have is all the worst people. And I'm not saying they should be censored or anything,
No, no, I
but
understand what you're saying. I'm being
yeah,
honest here. I'm being honest. As someone who's anti-censorship, I'm also saying
yeah,
I was just saying I should just start
yeah,
promoting my links on Odyssey and Rumble. But then
yeah,
I'm like, is it gonna limit the people I might like have on the
yeah.
show? But then again, do I want to have people on that I have to worry about that? And I'm just thinking out loud as we're talking. I'm thinking out loud about this.
Yeah. But yeah, or that influx of people then ends up creating a culture and a perception about that new platform that isn't necessarily fair, but people don't want to be associated with.
Yeah.
And so you end up in this bind where no new channel can emerge, no new website can emerge because the same thing happens over and over again. It's the same thing with social media competitors. It happens over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, like truth. That was a drop product. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I was thinking more of Gab, but yeah,
I don't even know about that one. See,
yeah, it's the one with the
um,
frog.
wouldn't it be funny though, like to someone to open like a super left wing account on Truth, just like go for it, and like that would be funny though. Has someone done that?
Well, if I was in charge, and you're very fortunate that I'm not, I would think that whenever one of these new platforms opens up, yeah, all the left wing people should go over there rather than telling people not to use these things
Yes,
or complaining that it's all full of right wing.
and
Well, all
then you
right,
get to test them because the right wing people are like, "Oh, we're anti censorship. Test that shit out.
yeah,
Test it out. Go for like you go like I
yeah,
don't like communism, but like go with your pro communist stuff and
yeah,
put it up there, see what happens. Like put it to the test and call them out if they censor you. See, it wasn't about free speech, was it? Like stuff like that.
yeah,
That's what they should do. Like a new platform comes out, just go for it.
yeah. But
Yeah, that would be interesting. Um, I wanna talk about something else that like because there's a few things that kind of like intersected where I really wanted to talk to you and have you back on the show because as always I think you have interesting points of view and um So there's a comic book artist who took his life recently, Ed Piskor. And we talk both seriously and jokingly about how people try to cancel you and go after you, but um I think there's like people still don't understand when you go after someone's livelihood because you don't agree with them over like some very like just I don't know like first reaction, and they just you have a bad reaction. I don't like this person. I'm gonna go after them. So we have someone who took his life over accusations that, as far as I understand, were not investigated or anything like that.
Um, yeah, I wasn't really familiar with Ed Piskor's work or
I wasn't
anything
either.
before
Yeah.
all this happened, but it has really affected me. Like I'm still thinking about it. And he was quite articulate in his suicide note about why and who he blamed for it, and it was people going after him to cancel him. And cancellation isn't just having your social media accounts taken away, right? They go after your job. If you rent where you're living, they'll go after your landlord. It's everything. It's all encompassing. It is like when the Scientologists kick you out or the Jehovah's Witnesses kick you out. You're suddenly incredibly isolated. Um, for me, when these things have happened to me, and I think for Ed before he took his own life, the thing that is the worst is people you know and who you think know you turning away from you or joining in with the mob. Um, that's what I think is the worst part of it. It's this sense of betrayal, and all these random people you don't know off the internet. Yeah, it's negative, but you don't know them, so it doesn't necessarily mean that much to you apart from the injustice of it usually. But when it's people people you've worked with, people you've been friends with for years, and they turn their back on you, often understandably because they don't want the same treatment you're being given, guilt by association, that is hard. That sweeps the ground out from under your feet. And for me, certainly, that I can't speak for Ed, obviously, but for me, that was what pushed me into those dark places. Was that sense of betrayal from people I knew or thought I knew?
I think we're going through an era where people are discovering who they are deep down. Because in the 90s, it was kind of easy to be like, oh, if push came to shove, I'd be like this. If the censorship era of whatever came back, I would be this and that. And and you're young and you're like, yeah, I'll take on the world. And then you have a family, you have a mortgage to pay, you have people depending on you, and then like maybe you work in an industry where like you have anyway, whatever. And yeah, people kind of find out who they are. Um,
Yeah,
and they don't always like to discover that, so they, in a way that makes them justify it even more, like because to face the truth, oh, I did this out of fear, would redefine who they are in their own mind's eye, in their own perception of themselves. So I think they have to convince themselves, no, actually, I really believe this, I really believe this, kind of like an abused person, like when they get isolated from their loved ones.
yeah,
And it's like, did you really want to cut out everyone you know and love for this one person who's manipulating you? Like, no, no, I don't want anyone, like. And I think it's kind of like that on a grand scale, on a social
yeah,
scale.
yeah,
And as the pendulum is kind of swinging very, very slowly, like I see people who are kind of like they seem to like start going center now. They're kind of like doing this tour of repairing their reputation. So when the pendulum goes back to the center or something, they don't find themselves on the other side of it, you know? So now they're like going back on a
Yeah.
not apology tour, but kind of like, hey, you know what? It turns out like this person wasn't so bad, and it's you've been brought up. Someone was going in there like repair the reputation repair tour as they see a pendulum swinging, where people might be like, hey, people are killing themselves over it. Maybe this is not so cool, cancel culture, you know? Or what they realize, maybe I'm not making as much money as I thought it would be with this side, and maybe I would, if I appeal to everyone, I'd make more money. Some people it's that self-serving, which
Yeah.
I think of a specific someone who went on interviews elsewhere and mentioned you. Oh yeah, I want to talk to Jim now because they heard things like motherfuckers. If you hadn't heard it 5, 10 years ago, like, oh, I
Yeah.
heard good things about Jim after all. No, no, you're on an apology tour under a different name, and I don't even
Yeah.
want to say his fucking name because I don't want him to get any attention. But
Um.
yeah,
Yeah.
unless you choose to say it, but I don't. I'm not inclined to. It's
I I've thought things were changing before. I've thought the pendulum was swinging before, and I've been wrong. So I don't want to predict that. I mean, the original sort of height of political correctness in the 90s lasted about 5 years, but we're
no
on
internet.
like 10. Yeah, well, we're on about 10 years of this, whatever you want to call it, cultural revolution. I don't know, something. But I have had people come to me and apologize more than the people who've been public about it. Um, for some of them, I think it's just they're now victims of the mob that they previously enabled, and so now they understand. And I'm inclined to be forgiving and to give people a chance and so on, because that's what I want. You know, people have heard awful things about me that aren't true, but I would want them to give me a second chance. So it only makes sense for me to give these people a second chance, because that's what I want to. That's what I want to see happen for me and people like me.
Yeah.
So I hope things are changing, but I think it's going to be slow. Um, and there are various things that could change this direction of travel again.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't think it'll ever go back to how it was. I don't think people will ever be able to not have their tribes anymore, their social tribes, you know.
yeah,
But I think maybe there's a certain like the whole internet thing. There's growing pains in it, you know. And I think maybe like if these are like I don't think we're even at the teenage years of the internet and dealing with it. But I think there's some learning where not everyone will. Like, some people will remain the same. Like I think, or like now forever, there's going to be that kind of mentality that's like that cancel culture mentality is not going to go anywhere. But I think the amount of people who jump on board of that will change, and then most people are actually more centrist. You know, like the I don't know if centrist is the right word for something like this, but whatever. And I think they just jump on board on either side out of fear or for support. You know, if they've been hit by one side, they'll go to the other side. You know, so I think we're gonna start going into an era where like the centrists will realize that they kind of outnumber the outliers on both sides and just chill the fuck out.
yeah.
So it's
I
not
don't.
gonna
I don't.
be. I don't think it's gonna be like before where they just went away. I don't think it's gonna be like that. But I think people are gonna realize like I don't have to do this. You know.
Yeah. I,
Um.
I.
Yeah.
I don't think it's centrist, right? Because I am way over on the left.
But I don't mean centrist in a
It's
left or right thing. I mean
no, I know, but
I'm
it's
trying to find words here, but yeah.
there's a tolerant, reasonable majority who,
Yes. Yeah.
that's who may hold political or social views all over the shop, but they're willing to tolerate other people with different views and
Yeah,
have
exactly.
discussions about it and hash it
Or don't
out.
want to
And
deal with the hassle. They're like, look, I just want to
yeah,
write this book. I don't
yeah.
care who this guy voted for. You know, like,
I, I
yeah,
think what you said about people being forced to kind of face up to who they really are, I think that's quite insightful. Because me coming up, growing up, we had heavy metal will make you kill yourself. D&D will turn you into a Satanist. Video nasties will turn you into a murderer, as will computer games. And we all sort of stood up as one with our middle fingers to anyone who was saying that kind of shit. So when the mob came for me, I think I quite reasonably expected all of these people who had told all these other moral panics to get fucked would be stood there alongside me. And I suddenly found myself alone, like that guy in the photo where everyone else is doing the Nazi salute, right? I thought all these people are at my back, and it's like you look back and you realize, shit, it's just me.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that because in the past there was a threat. People are very self-serving. Most of them are. And I've often made a comparison. I'm not going to go over it again, but in videos with you and Peter Watts and with Raji, I've mentioned this. Like people like to feel heroic without having to go through the danger of heroism. So attacking a bad guy online makes them feel like that without putting themselves in any kind of risk. And this is
Yeah,
why some people have nothing else going for them. They will stick to the bad guy for years and years and years, like because they think they're doing something just. Don't let him back into the hobby. Like it's deranged. It's completely
yeah,
deranged.
yeah.
Um, and what's interesting is they don't go after the real bad guys who's anywhere. Like there's an actual Nazi doing role playing
Yeah.
games, and I don't see them attack him as much, which is crazy to me.
No.
It's like that would be the ideal target if you actually were noble, if you actually were
Mm.
heroic, if you actually, even if it's just online comments and all that, if you actually cared for the values you claim to care. Not grabbing a left anarchist like you and calling you alt right. That's nonsense. That is not that's I've seen a video of that, and the guy is an idiot to the utmost degree. But like it makes no sense, and there's no like nowhere like I challenge anyone to ever find anything you might have said that would be right wing. I don't think you've ever written anything that might be right wing ever. I don't think. But if it is, it's very centrist right. If it ever is found.
Well, it's like biblical exegesis, right? Yeah, they will. If you go looking for something, you're going to find it.
Exactly.
Like
But
the
the point
number
I was going to make,
23 or whatever.
but the point I
Yeah,
was going to make is that, and I'm taking too long to make it. Sorry. Um, is that in the past, when you and your fellow geeks were confronted by these people, they were threatening to take away the hobby. So it's very self-serving. See, this is where I'm getting at. If I go along with them, I lose my hobby. Now, the new threat is if you don't denounce this person, we kick you out of your hobby. You lose the hobby if you don't denounce. So even the rebelliousness was not rebelliousness. It was
Mm.
self-serving energy,
Yeah,
self-serving pathos with a cause in mind to make you feel better about it. Not
yeah,
you, but the person. So this
yeah,
is how I see the difference. This is where I think the line is drawn because in the past is like if I go along with what the priests and politicians are saying, I'm not going to be playing video games anymore. If I go
yeah.
with what the priest is saying, I'm not playing D&D anymore. But
I think the
now
other
now it's like, hey, if you don't denounce Grim, you don't get to have your
yeah,
followers anymore talking about the stuff you love.
and the other thing I think is all those punks and rebels of my misspent youth now have kids and mortgages, and so if their job gets threatened,
Yeah,
it's not just them that's hurt. It's their spouse, it's their kids, it's they could end up on the street.
yeah,
So I understand the fear that drives a lot of people, and I can forgive it to an extent. I've come to a sort of understanding of where some people are at. It's still cowardice, in my opinion, because if everyone stood up like they used to, there wouldn't be a problem. But I can see where they're coming from.
yeah. I think I had to come to terms with like you are very forgiving to certain people. I'm not gonna bring up any names, but I'm like, well, this person turned on you, or but then I kind of like, Raji at some point in one of his videos, he's also very anti-censorship, obviously. He said something like he was talking about one of his collaborators, and he said even when I threw him, and he was expressing regret at having like thrown someone off the bus. So he would say, and now he's turning around with that, but he said even when I threw someone off the bus, at least I didn't throw them under the bus. you know, so it's like, okay, he stopped collaborating with this person, but he didn't go and denounce the person, all that. Now, Raji
Yeah,
has said that there's people who told him, if you denounce him, you'll be let back in. And I wish that Raji would just go and post the screenshots of those conversations. I think that deserves to be
yeah.
out there, but that's up to him, of course. I
Uh,
know you talked to him,
me-
so do let him know. I'd be really interested in him posting it.
I talk to Jim a lot. We are brothers from another mother. I think we have very similar attitudes and differences, but I think we're both in the same
Both.
same boat, same mindset about a lot of this stuff. Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a really good
When
guy.
are you gonna make an official Lamentations book? I
Well,
know
I
it's
guess
dodgy, but
machinations kind of was,
yeah.
but yeah, I've been meaning to ask him about doing something proper, writing something for him, but he always has so much on his plate, so many projects. There's never a good time.
Just
So
make a book. You send to him. He doesn't want it. You publish it on your own.
yeah, could
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Present a fair company. Yeah.
They're just all done. Like here it is. You want it? He's so busy. If it's already all done, he might go like, yeah, okay, it's ready to go. If not, you put it on your store. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Machinations was that's a book that I got to know you for. I like that book. I flipped through it so many times, and I ran it one time, and for you actually, for you and someone else on another channel, the Geek channel.
Yeah, that was another experiment and kind of reaction to the popularity of the OSR because I was never a D&D guy growing up,
Yeah,
so I kind of challenged myself to write something old school, and yeah, it did quite well that one.
I really like it. Like I remember people complaining that because there were skills to choose and all that, it wasn't old school enough, and that they want to like create the characters more quickly, you know. Um, but I think like over time, people have kind of softened on that stance, you know. But that was back in
Mm,
the day when it was like really. And anytime someone's like, "Hey, is there like because what you can do, machinations, what's fun about it? It's like a toolbox for a sci-fi game, and you can really do whatever with it. And the tone is very tongue in cheek and all that, but as long as you're up for cinematic, you can actually do lots of styles with it. You can do some
yeah,
like if you want to do cinematic cyberpunk, you can certainly do that. And you know, like it's there's a lot of
yeah.
stuff you can.
Well, look,
It's a really good book for a lot of things.
here's the secret to machinations, right?
Yeah,
You can try anything you like, but you'll be at a -5 penalty, and you can take skill levels to offset that penalty.
yeah.
And that is basically the entire game. So there you go.
Yeah, I think you're at some point you're playing with doing like a sort of like sword and sorcery version of it or something.
Yeah, I've got some whack ideas about doing like standard fantasy, like a very different approach to things like elves and dwarves and so on. So it struck me that it would be funny to take Lamentations, which is at its heart, a fantasy standard D&D game, turn it into a science fiction game, and then turn it back and see what see how it ends up.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a really neat thing, that book. And you know, like when I ran it, it wasn't even like a space opera thing. When I ran it for you and King Crossy, it was like more of a cyberpunk, uh, and it ended up being like this. It was in a train. It was like kind of like an action. Um, it's too irrelevant to the talk show. But if anyone's interested, just contact me on social media. Send me a message, and I'll send you a link to the game, to the recording of the game we did. But it was kind of like an action scene in a train, and it played quite well. And I remember that you added stuff that um, is not traditionally OSR, like armors, like you roll your armor instead of just having a set armor class, and it actually made it really, it made the action really fun because there's like lots. Even when you get hit, you're still rolling, you know, and
Yeah,
it had a really nice flow to it, I thought, which you can easily pick it up if you know these games. And then there's little touches that, as you always say, rules make the game, right? So
yeah.
you can add little things here and there that made it kind of work for like an action space opera. That it's really fun. So yeah, that's the book that I was like, oh, I'm gonna follow what this guy's doing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. We're at 1 hour 40 minutes. I think we.
Have you done your whole list? Is there much left?
No, that's it. That's my list.
All
This
right.
is the part where I ask you if there's anything that you wanted to add.
I don't know. I I think things are changing slowly. Though, as I said, I've been wrong before. But something feels a little bit different this time. I'm seeing people having the discussions again, rather than just screaming at each other and blocking. So, that's good. And so I've had like two people publicly apologize to me and reach out to have discussions.
Hmm.
And in my case, for every person who's actually doing it publicly, there's like five or so doing it privately. So again, I wish they'd stand by their principles and their new
But
outlook on
publicly,
me. But yeah, but it is what it is.
yeah.
So yeah, I hopefully things can get better. I think as far as the games industry is concerned, we're headed into some interesting times because it's from my point of view, whenever D&D falters, that is when the rest of the gaming industry becomes really interesting and new and innovative things happen.
Like Vampire the
Um,
Masquerade when second edition was on its way out.
Vampire the Masquerade and the whole sort of wave of dark, more narrative games
When
that
third
happened.
edition went out and fourth showed up, and then that was the OSR showed up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh my,
So
well, sorry, you could say it was third edition, but when third edition ended, that's when the OSR really picked up steam. I think at the very
yeah,
yeah.
but it really took off when Pathfinder surpassed D&D and kind of the OSR kind of went along for the
Yeah.
for the ride sort of thing. So I fully expect something interesting to
Fourth
happen
to
over the
fifth
next
is
couple of
interesting.
years.
Fourth to fifth is interesting in that I think the big change was fifth edition itself.
Hmm.
Like, kind of like because as your words, like it was supposed to be a return to form. Fifth edition was back when fourth ended, and then it became something else. But which actually Joe Manganiello has gone very public about it to his credit. Like
Yeah.
he actually, I was like, wow, look at this guy, Hollywood celebrity, like going out on a limb and saying, and I think now that certain deals are off, he gets to speak his mind a bit more, because his Dragonlance show is not going to get off the ground. So any politeness he had to keep with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast is out the window.
Yeah.
And so now he gets to say it, certain things that were bugging him about things that happened during fifth edition.
Yeah.
But it was really refreshing. That guy's a real fan. Was what I took from it. He's not
Yeah.
a poser.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Critical Role's Daggerheart is coming out. Whether the critters whether the critters are enough to propel
Yo,
them to massive success, I
what
don't
was
know.
it? The first. Okay, wait. The first book. What was the name again?
Candela Obscura.
Candela Obscura. Like it didn't even have a fail state for the game. Like they forgot to put what happens when you get hurt or something
Yeah,
when you're supposed to
yeah,
die. They had to put an errata for. Oh yeah, this is how you die in the game.
yeah,
It's like I have no respect for that. I'm sorry.
yeah. That was dumb, and that's
I don't
lessened their
care.
chances of
Listen.
success. But
I don't care anyone out there. You can make the shittiest book you want. If you included all the rules you need to play, you're already ahead of Candela Obscura, who had like I don't know a budget of I don't know how much. It was dude. When I read that, I laughed. I was like, "Oh my god, this is pathetic. This is pathetic."
but they may sort themselves out for Daggerheart. We'll see, and they've got that audience.
What's
See
Dagger Heart
when
supposed to be? Is it powered by fate,
uh,
powered by the
it,
apocalypse, whatever it
it's
is?
a bit of a Franken game. It's got aspects of uh, Powered by the Apocalypse or Blades in the Dark to it, but it's moved a bit more traditional roleplay, and
Yeah.
it's got all these bells and whistles. I don't know. I'm curious to see what will happen, and
I
if
think
it's
I
not
think
them,
yeah.
who is it going to
I think
be?
the critical role people are bound by their audience now. I don't think that's where their heart is, and it shows. I don't follow
Hmm.
them, but I see snippets, and you know what? Matt Mercer shows up with a blanket and all that. Like I think, my personal theory is I think he's uncomfortable, but in a way he's uncomfortable by the people following him at this point, by the expectations they have of him, which I don't
Yeah.
think are him and his group, but they have to play along now. And I think the blanket is like this, just like I guess this is what the crowd likes to see. Like, oh, I got my safety blanket on. Like I think it's performative to a degree. I don't think his malaise was performative, but I think his
Mm.
presentation of it felt like, oh, this is what I have to do. And him stepping away, I think is just taking a break
Yeah.
from. But like it was crazy. It was like they would do something a setting that was like Victorian, and then people would say that they because some characters had like an explorer's outfit, which weren't just like, oh, that's colonizer clothes. But that was like just like European clothes of the time for any activity that had to do with the outdoors. It wasn't like specific. So
Yeah.
it was just like stuff like that, where like no matter what they do, it was like always kind of like it was getting weird.
Yeah.
And I certainly think they're progressive and all that, but I think they just got trouble like some really weird fan base. And when you see
Yeah.
the guy with a blanket, oh, everything going on, and he goes for things that he thinks all people are gonna latch onto that, and they're gonna be the kind of
Yeah.
people, oh yeah, take a break from that. And again, take mental health really seriously. Like I fully respect what you go through, and I'm not saying there's no truth to what he said because he made a statement about having to take a break and all that, but like wearing the blanket and all that, that I think was performative to get a point across and get a break, and which is very real, that need. Uh,
Yeah.
am I
Yeah.
crazy here? It's just like,
No, audience capture is a real thing, and it happens to a lot of people in the
mm,
public eye. Like you'll see YouTubers gradually drift in whatever direction their audience is,
yeah,
more
human
so.
nature. Yeah,
Yeah, it drives engagement is
yeah.
part of it. The fact that that's the community that's influencing you is part of it. So yeah, I mean, if he takes a step back, maybe that'll give him the room to get back in his own head instead of his audience's head, and that will help. Um, yeah, Candela Obscura was a mistake
Go back to this.
on every level.
Yeah, but
Um,
yeah,
but I think Critical Role is in the position that Pathfinder was, because Pathfinder succeeded because it had a huge built-in audience, because they'd been running Dungeon and Dragon for so long.
the
They had the
magazines.
mailing lists, yeah, and they could translate, or people didn't want to move on from third edition, so they could carry that with them. The Critters, they've got this huge audience, so they're positioned to do the same sort of thing that Pathfinder did. Whether they'll be able to pull it off, I don't know.
I think they should have stuck
Um,
to. I think they should have gone with their sixth edition.
mm,
I think they should have gone. This is our take on the next edition.
yeah,
I don't understand their I don't understand their decision making. I think they believed too much into what some of the fan base was saying, like, oh, D&D is problematic. It started off with problematic people. Fifth edition did. The creators were evil. Like all of that revisionist history or taking history out of context. Like for example, Superman comics. Like during World War II, and there was a lot of racism towards Japanese people. Like not like political takes on what the Japanese government was doing, just outright racism. And even the first Batman serial in black and white, which you can watch on Tubi, has like the narrator praising the American government for the Japanese Americans internment camps. Now, if I'm watching The Dark Knight or the new Batman movie with Pattinson by Matt Reeves or whatever, and some motherfucker would come to me, do you know that Batman is a racist concept based on racist themes and all that? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, look at the original black and white serial, see what they said over there. I'm like, yeah, but that was something of the time. It has nothing to do with the product itself now.
yeah,
So, but of course, it's easier because I understand that with D&D because you kind of have aspects of history and cultures and European culture like mixed in there. So I understand how that muddies the waters. I get that. And listen, I don't want to go into specifics, but I do understand how like when you go in certain books and go, oh, the this version of elves with darker skin are the bad guys. I get it. And I'm not saying you can't change anything, but to go and say oh, this person from the 70s saying that means he's a piece of shit. Like this thing that was written at a certain era by people who maybe only like didn't have like the same kind of like culture around them, like that means they're evil, like i- or they didn't know better. Sometimes they're just like pasty white nerds in rural America, back then, like they didn't know that saying this could be offensive to someone, and like I'm sure they would be horrified to have thought of it that way, like I like to
Yeah,
think at least. So it's just one of those things where I think Critical Role came to believe that too much. So they wanted to distance themselves from D&D, but D&D is what got them to or Pathfinder at first, and then D&D fifth is what made them.
yeah,
And despite all
yeah,
the people complaining, that's still what they're still playing fifth edition mostly.
yeah, yeah. No, that probably a sort of continuity fifth edition. If they came up with their own version, that would be an
Yeah,
exact mirror of what Pathfinder did.
dude, they should have
So
done their sixth edition. I don't understand what the fuck they're doing.
I think the guy they have writing, who are doing the bulk of the writing on their books, at least the rules wise, has very much bought into the story game. The power by the apocalypse,
But that
the
is
Blades in
not
the Dark.
mainstream. That is not mainstream, and not even Critical Role can make it mainstream.
Yeah.
That's
But we shall see. But I think they are best positioned to succeed. Whether they will, we'll have to see.
yeah, but I don't think their game is gonna take off. I think
No.
before long you're gonna see them playing D&D again, or whatever sixth edition, or whatever spin-off of D&D another company comes up with that takes up steam. Like I don't think 3 years from now they're playing their own games.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, Jim, thank you very much for coming to the show for this extended, almost 2-hour episode.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for coming, everyone. The information for Jim's store and all that will be down in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.